Inglés. The clattering of plates and the sizzling of bacon filled the air of the bustling diner, a familiar symphony that Clara had come to know by heart. It was another busy morning at Rosie's diner, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pancakes cooking on the griddle. Clara weaved through the labyrinth of tables, her apron tied snugly around her waist, a notepad clutched in one hand, while the other balanced a tray laden with steaming mugs. She moved with a practiced grace, delivering orders to her customers, each face a blend of routine and unpredictability. There was Mr. Thompson, a regular who always ordered the same thing, a black coffee and 2 eggs over easy, served with a side of crispy bacon. He looked up from his newspaper, a smile breaking through his otherwise serious demeanor. "Morning, Clara. You're looking chipper today," he said, his voice gruff but warm. "Morning, Mr. Thompson. Just trying to keep up with all this hustle," Clara replied, her smile genuine as she poured him a fresh cup of coffee. As she worked, her mind often wandered beyond the confines of the diner's chipped formica countertops and faded vinyl booths. Clara had dreams that stretched far beyond the grease-stained apron she wore. She envisioned herself as the owner of a quaint little restaurant, a place where the smell of homemade pasta would waft through the air, enticing customers who sought comfort in delicious food. She could almost see the decor in her mind, warm colors, rustic wooden tables, and the sound of laughter echoing against the walls. "Clara, can you get table 3 their check?" called out Lucy, her fellow waitress, who was juggling her own orders. "On it!" Clara shouted back, shaking herself from her daydream. She hurried over to table 3, where a young couple was engrossed in conversation, oblivious to the world around them. As Clara approached, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of their chatter. "I swear, if I can just get that promotion, I'll finally show them what I'm made of," the young man said, his voice laced with ambition. "Just stay focused, and you'll get there," the woman encouraged, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Maybe someday I'll open my own tech startup," he added with a chuckle, a note of determination infusing his words. Clara paused for a moment, feeling a pang of longing. She wanted that for herself too. Success, recognition, the ability to create something that belonged to her. But every time she looked around the diner, the weight of her current reality settled heavily on her shoulders. "One day," she whispered to herself, a mantra that she clung to, even when doubt threatened to consume her. Meanwhile, in a starkly different reality across town, Ethan sat in his luxurious office high above the city, a glass of whiskey cradled in his hand. The panoramic view of the skyline was breathtaking, but Ethan's attention was far from the horizon. His colleagues surrounded him, their laughter echoing off the sleek, modern decor of the room. They were discussing the latest acquisitions and investments, their voices a blend of bravado and arrogance. "Did you hear about the new tech company? They're practically begging for funding," one of his associates, Mark, said, leaning back in his chair, a smug grin plastered on his face. "They don't know how to run a business. It's a gold mine waiting to be exploited." Ethan leaned forward, his expression shifting from detached amusement to intrigue. "It's so easy to take advantage of the desperate, isn't it?" he remarked, his tone dripping with condescension. "But it's far more entertaining to show them their place." The group erupted in laughter, and Ethan felt a surge of satisfaction. His wealth and status had become his identity, and he reveled in the power it afforded him. The idea struck him like a bolt of lightning. What if he could showcase his superiority in a way that would leave a lasting impression? "Let's invite a commoner to the party. You know, someone from the other side of the tracks," he proposed, a smirk creeping onto his lips. "It'll be a spectacle. Just imagine the looks on their faces when they see what real success looks like." "Brilliant idea," another colleague chimed in, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Ethan's mind buzzed with possibilities. He envisioned a party filled with affluent guests, all dressed to the nines, sipping champagne and exchanging stories of their privileged lives. And amidst them, a simple waitress. Someone like Clara would serve as the perfect contrast, a living reminder of the social ladder he had climbed. As the laughter died down, Ethan's thoughts turned to the diner he frequented. He remembered Clara, the way she moved with purpose and the fire in her eyes that hinted at untapped potential. "I know just the person," he said, his voice low and filled with a sardonic glee. The next day, Ethan strolled into Rosie's diner, a place he only visited when he craved a dose of nostalgia. As he entered, the bell above the door chimed, and heads turned in his direction. He was a striking figure, with tailored suits that exuded confidence and an air of authority that seemed to command attention. He spotted Clara behind the counter, her back turned as she wiped down a table. A smirk crossed his face as he approached her, his footsteps deliberately loud. Clara turned around, her expression shifting from surprise to recognition. "Ethan," she said, forcing a smile, "what brings you here?" "Just came for a quick bite," he replied, leaning against the counter, his gaze piercing. "But I was thinking, how about you join me for a special event I'm hosting?" Clara raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. "What kind of event?" "Just a little gathering of friends. You know, the elite of the city," he said, his voice dripping with feigned warmth. "It would be an honor to have a local business owner like you grace us with your presence." Clara's heart raced. There was something about the way he spoke that made her uneasy. "I appreciate the invitation, but I'm really busy with work," she replied, attempting to deflect. "Come on, it'll be fun. You'll meet some interesting people," he continued, pressing on with an insistent smile. "Plus, it's a chance to network. You might even find someone who could help you achieve your dreams." Clara hesitated, the temptation dancing at the edges of her mind. She had longed for opportunities like this, yet something about Ethan's demeanor felt insincere. "Okay," she finally said, a cautious edge in her voice. "I'll think about it." "Think fast," he shot back, pulling an elegant invitation from his jacket pocket and sliding it across the counter. "You wouldn't want to miss such an exclusive event, now would you?" As Clara took the invitation, she felt a chill run down her spine, a sense of foreboding hanging in the air. The ornate script gleamed under the diner's fluorescent lights, and she could almost hear the laughter of the elite echoing in her ears. "See you there," Ethan said, his smirk widening as he turned to leave. Clara watched him go, the weight of the invitation heavy in her hand. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped into a game she didn't fully understand, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Clara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, the soft light illuminating her features as she assessed her reflection. She could hardly recognize herself, the girl in the mirror looking far more polished than the waitress who served coffee and pie at the diner. Tonight was important, she reminded herself, even if the invitation had come from someone who seemed to relish in the idea of belittling her. She had spent the last hour shaking off her doubts, but they clung to her like the dampness of the spring air outside. "What if it's a mistake to go?" she murmured, her brow furrowing as she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The invitation felt heavy in her pocket, a reminder of Ethan's patronizing smirk as he handed it to her. She pressed her lips together, trying to suppress the swell of anxiety rising within her. "Clara!" A voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to see her best friend Mia leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed and a knowing smile on her face. "What's with the frown? You're going to that party, and you're going to knock their socks off." Clara sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't know, Mia. Look at me. I don't belong in a place like that. Everyone will be in designer clothes, sipping champagne, while I'm just a waitress." Mia stepped into the bathroom, her expression softening. "Listen, Clara, you have every right to be there. This could be your chance to meet people who can help you with your dream of opening a restaurant. You just need to remember that you're more than just a waitress. You have talent, passion, and a vision." Clara met Mia's gaze, the sincerity in her friend's eyes making her heart swell. "But what if they just see me as a joke? What if Ethan is just setting me up to humiliate me in front of his friends?" "Then show them who you really are," Mia said, her voice firm. "You're not just some poor girl from the diner. You're ambitious, and you're going to prove that tonight. Besides, if Ethan thinks he can make fun of you, he's in for a surprise." Clara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Okay, you're right. I'll go. I'll show them that I'm more than what they think." With renewed determination, Clara went through her closet, pulling out a simple but elegant dress, a deep blue that complemented her figure. She slipped it on, the fabric soft against her skin, and paired it with a pair of heels that Mia had lent her. As she applied her makeup, she felt a flicker of excitement mingling with the nerves. She was ready to step into a world that had felt so far away until now. The drive to Ethan's mansion felt surreal. Clara navigated through the quiet, tree-lined streets of the affluent neighborhood, her heart pounding with each turn. The mansion loomed ahead, its grandeur almost intimidating, with elegant lights twinkling against the darkening sky. As she parked her car, Clara took a moment to compose herself. She could do this. She could walk into that party and seize the opportunity. Once inside, Clara was immediately hit by the cacophony of laughter and clinking glasses. The lavish interiors were adorned with expensive art pieces, and the air hummed with the scent of gourmet food wafting from the kitchen. She hesitated at the entrance, taking in the crowd. Everywhere she looked, there were people in designer outfits, some laughing boisterously, while others engaged in hushed, conspiratorial conversations. "Look who it is! The diner girl!" A voice rang out, slicing through the noise. Clara turned to see a group of elegantly dressed women snickering as they pointed in her direction. "Did Ethan really invite her?" one of them whispered, her tone dripping with disdain. "I can't believe it. What's she doing here?" Clara felt her cheeks flush, a wave of humiliation threatening to wash over her. She clenched her fists, reminding herself of Mia's words. This was her chance to show them who she was. Ignoring the whispers, she straightened her back and walked further into the room, scanning for Ethan. "Clara!" Ethan's voice boomed across the room, cutting through the chatter like a knife. He approached her, his presence commanding as he flashed that arrogant smile. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Thanks for the invitation," Clara replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She felt the weight of the guests' stares as they shifted their attention to her. Ethan leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "I hope you're ready for a night to remember. My friends are eager to meet you." His eyes sparkled with mischief, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that he was reveling in the spectacle of her discomfort. "Sure," she said, forcing a smile as she tried to navigate the unexpected feelings swirling inside her. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself standing awkwardly by the buffet table, clutching a glass of sparkling water. She was painfully aware of the stares and whispers that followed her. It was as if she had stepped onto a stage where everyone was eager to see her fail. "Isn't it adorable?" One of the women from earlier leaned over to her friend, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "She probably thinks she's going to impress someone with her, what, waitressing skills?" Clara felt her heart race, the urge to flee almost overwhelming. But then she thought of her dreams, the late nights spent planning her restaurant, and the sacrifices she had made. No, she wouldn't let them get to her. Suddenly a man approached, his face familiar. Clara recognized him from the diner. He occasionally came in for lunch. "Clara, is that you?" he asked, his eyes widening in surprise. "Josh, I didn't expect to see you here," Clara exclaimed, relief flooding through her. "Yeah, I was invited by a friend," he said, glancing around. "What about you?" I got invited by Ethan," she said, her voice trailing off. "Ah, I see," he said, his expression shifting slightly as he glanced at Ethan, who was now surrounded by a group of equally smug-looking individuals. "Well, good luck. I know how these parties can be." "Thanks," Clara said, appreciating his kindness. As Josh moved away, she felt a sense of isolation creep back in, but she was determined to hold her ground. As the night progressed, Clara overheard snippets of conversations. The guests were oblivious to her presence, discussing their lavish vacations, expensive tastes, and exclusive events. She felt like an outsider, a mere observer of a world that was so alien to her. "Look at her," one woman whispered, gesturing subtly toward Clara. "She really thinks she belongs here?" "Isn't it cute?" another chimed in, and Clara couldn't help but feel the sting of their laughter. But amid the whispers, Clara felt a flicker of something else, a determination to prove them wrong. She had come here on her own terms, and she wouldn't let their judgments define her. As the evening wore on, she caught Ethan's eye from across the room. He wore a smug expression, clearly enjoying her discomfort. The realization struck her. He expected her to fail, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Not tonight. Taking a deep breath, Clara straightened her shoulders and decided to step out of the shadows. She made her way toward a small group of guests who were discussing culinary trends, her heart racing, but her mind focused. This was her chance. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady as she approached. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the latest food trends. I'm Clara, by the way." The guests turned to her, their expressions shifting from surprise to curiosity. "Oh, hello," one of them said, a hint of intrigue in her tone. "What do you do?" "I'm a waitress, but I have plans to open my own restaurant someday," Clara said, her passion shining through. "I love experimenting with flavors and creating unique dishes. I believe food can tell a story." The group exchanged glances, and Clara felt a wave of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn this night around. As the conversation flowed, Clara found herself feeling more at ease, her passion for food breaking down the barriers erected by wealth and status. She shared her dreams, her culinary inspirations, and the challenges she faced working in the diner. The guests leaned in, captivated by her authenticity and enthusiasm. In that moment, Clara realized that perhaps Ethan's invitation wasn't just a cruel joke. Maybe it was a chance to showcase her true self, to step out of the shadows and into her light. And as the laughter and chatter continued around her, she felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. A hope that told her she belonged, not just in that room, but in the world she had always dreamed of creating. As the party swirled with laughter and clinking glasses, Ethan leaned against the grand marble column, surveying the room with a sense of superiority. His guests, a mix of high-powered executives and glamorous socialites, were wrapped in conversation, their laughter ringing like music to his ears. He caught sight of Clara, standing awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, her simple yet elegant dress contrasting sharply with the extravagant gown surrounding her. The sight sparked a thrill of anticipation within him. "Look at her," Ethan said, his voice dripping with condescension as he turned to his friends. "Isn't she perfect for tonight's entertainment?" He gestured towards Clara, who seemed to be trying to blend into the background, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. A ripple of laughter cascaded through the group. "What do you expect? She's just a waitress," one of his friends chimed in, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "This is going to be good." Ethan smirked, reveling in the idea of how he would expose Clara to his elite circle. "Let's give her a proper introduction," he said, pushing himself away from the column. He strode towards Clara, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Clara, sensing his approach, straightened up, attempting to mask her unease with a composed smile. But inside, she could feel her heart pounding against her chest. She had come to this party believing it was a chance to network, to make connections that could help her achieve her dreams. But now she was acutely aware of the eyes that lingered on her, the whispers that seemed to echo in her ears. "Clara, darling," Ethan called out, his voice dripping with feigned warmth, making her cringe. "Come here. I want to introduce you to my friends." The laughter died down as the guests turned to watch. Clara hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to run, but she took a deep breath, reminding herself of her dreams and ambitions. She stepped forward, forcing a smile onto her lips. "Hello, everyone," she managed, her voice steady despite the butterflies dancing in her stomach. Ethan gestured widely, as if unveiling a prized possession. "This is Clara, a local waitress who graciously accepted my invitation to join us tonight. Isn't that charming?" The laughter returned, sharp and mocking, as they regarded her like a curious specimen. Clara's face flushed crimson, but something within her ignited. She refused to let Ethan's condescension break her spirit. "Actually, I'm here because I believe in seizing opportunities," she said, her voice rising above the laughter. "I'm passionate about cooking, and one day I want to own my own restaurant." The room fell silent, the laughter fading into an awkward stillness. Ethan's smirk faltered for a moment, surprise flashing across his face. "Really?" he asked, incredulous. "A restaurant? How quaint." "Quaint?" Clara repeated, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. "It's not quaint. It's a dream worth pursuing. I work hard every day, and I believe that with determination, anyone can achieve their goals." She could feel the eyes of the guests upon her, curiosity replacing their earlier mockery. Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but found himself stumbling over his words. "Well, that's an admirable sentiment," he finally said, though his tone was laced with sarcasm. But you do realize that the restaurant business is cutthroat, right? It's not as easy as flipping pancakes. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Clara countered, her confidence growing. I know the challenges, but I also know that passion can drive success. I've seen it happen. The guests exchanged glances, some nodding slowly, clearly taken by Clara's unexpected boldness. Ethan could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the way the laughter had turned into a murmur of intrigue. He had intended to humiliate her, to exhibit his power and wealth. But here she was, standing her ground, refusing to be the punchline of his joke. One of the guests, a sophisticated woman with striking red hair, stepped forward. I have to say, Clara, your passion is refreshing. It's easy to forget in this world of excess that hard work and ambition matter. Clara's heart soared at the compliment. Thank you. I think it's important to remember where we come from and what we want to achieve. I may be a waitress, but I have dreams just like everyone else here. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, feeling the spotlight on him instead. Dreams are one thing, Clara, but reality is often more complicated. You have to understand that success requires more than just passion. True, Clara replied, her voice resolute. But success starts with believing in yourself. I may not have your resources, but I have something you can't buy. Determination. The guests murmured again, some nodding in agreement, while Ethan's face turned a shade of crimson. He had underestimated her, and the realization burned like fire in his chest. As the conversation continued, Clara found herself at the center of attention, her story captivating those around her. She spoke about her love for cooking, the joy it brought her, and her vision for a restaurant that would celebrate local flavors. The more she spoke, the more she could see intrigue spark in the eyes of her audience. Ethan stood to the side, his facade of arrogance cracking, replaced with a mix of irritation and admiration. How could this waitress, this so-called commoner, turn the tide of the evening? He had wanted to showcase her as an example of the inferiority of those less fortunate, but instead she was shining brighter than any of them. "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" asked a young man dressed in an expensive suit, leaning in closer. Clara smiled, feeling emboldened. "I want to run a restaurant that not only serves great food, but also brings people together. A place where the community can gather, celebrate, and enjoy a meal made with love." The guests listened intently, some even leaning forward as she painted a picture of her dream. For the first time that night, Clara felt a sense of belonging, a connection with people who were genuinely interested in her story. And as Ethan watched, he felt the ground shift beneath him. "Perhaps you could give a cooking demonstration at my restaurant one day," the red-headed woman suggested. "I'd love to see your passion in action." Clara's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? I would love that. Thank you." Ethan clenched his jaw, the evening slipping from his control. The laughter had transformed into admiration, and Clara was the one drawing people in. He had wanted to expose her as a fool, but instead she had become the star of the evening. As the guests continued to engage Clara, asking questions and sharing their own experiences, Ethan felt a wave of frustration wash over him. This was not how the night was supposed to unfold. He had positioned himself as the king of the castle, and now a mere waitress was threatening to dethrone him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he finally spoke, attempting to reclaim the attention of the room, "let's not forget the real reason we're here tonight." But Clara cut him off, her voice steady and confident. "The real reason we're here is to connect, to share our dreams. Isn't that what life is about?" A ripple of applause broke out among the guests, some even cheering Clara's name. Ethan's face darkened, the laughter and camaraderie he had sought to control now turning against him. As the night wore on, Clara found herself surrounded by newfound allies, her dreams now a topic of genuine interest. And for Ethan, the evening had become a lesson in humility, one he never expected, leaving him to grapple with the realization that perhaps true wealth lay not in money, but in the power of dreams, in the strength of character. With each passing moment, the balance of power shifted, and Clara's spirit shone brighter than the extravagant chandeliers above them. And as Ethan watched, he couldn't help but wonder if he had miscalculated everything, underestimating the girl who had dared to dream amidst the opulence of his world. Clara stood in the center of the opulent living room, surrounded by guests clad in designer gowns and tailored suits. The atmosphere, once filled with laughter and clinking glasses, had shifted dramatically after her bold confrontation with Ethan. Now all eyes were on her as she prepared to share her story. A flicker of uncertainty danced in her chest, but the embers of determination sparked brighter. "Thank you for giving me a moment," Clara began, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. "I know I'm not part of this world. At least not yet." She smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across her face. "But I want to share why I'm here tonight." The room fell silent, a hush of curiosity enveloping the space, and Clara took a deep breath. "I've been a waitress for the last few years, working at a small diner. Every day I serve meals and listen to stories, dreaming of one day owning my own restaurant. Cooking isn't just my job, it's my passion. I believe food has the power to bring people together, to create memories," she explained, her eyes sparkling as she spoke. Ethan stood to the side, his expression shifting from smugness to discomfort. He fidgeted with his glass, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. His friends, originally eager for a spectacle, were now captivated by Clara's sincerity. He tried to interject, to steer the attention back to himself, but the words stuck in his throat. "What kind of restaurant would you want to open?" One of the guests, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, asked, leaning forward in her chair, clearly intrigued. Clara's heart raced. "I want to create a place where everyone feels welcome, regardless of their background. A cozy bistro with a homey atmosphere where people can enjoy good food and connect with one another. I want to celebrate the stories behind the dishes, the cultures they come from, and the ingredients that make them special," she replied, her enthusiasm infectious. Several guests nodded, visibly impressed. Clara noticed a man in a sharp suit scribbling notes on a small notepad, and it fueled her confidence. "I've learned so much from my experiences, both good and bad. Every plate I serve teaches me something new. I've had to overcome so many obstacles, but I refuse to let my circumstances define me," she declared. "Why not let someone help you turn that dream into a reality?" Another guest chimed in, a hint of excitement in her voice. "You clearly have the passion. Have you ever thought about entering a culinary program?" Clara's cheeks flushed as she considered the question. "I've thought about it, but it always felt out of reach. Between working and paying the bills, I never had the opportunity to pursue formal training. But I've always believed that if you have the will, you can find a way," she said, her resolve unshaken. As she spoke, Ethan felt the tide turning. The guests were rallying around Clara, their fascination with her story evident. He tried to regain control of the conversation, stepping forward with an air of authority. "While passion is admirable, it's not enough to succeed in the culinary world," he interjected, attempting to cast doubt on her aspirations. "It requires connections, funding, and a certain level of sophistication that not everyone possesses." Clara turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And yet, there are countless chefs who started with nothing. They built their success through hard work and perseverance. Isn't that what true success is about?" she challenged, her voice firm. The guests murmured in agreement, sensing the tension between them. Ethan's bravado faltered as he noticed the shift in the room. Clara's authenticity was compelling, and he felt the ground beneath him beginning to crumble. He attempted to pivot the conversation once more, but the crowd had already shifted their focus back to Clara. "Have you thought about showcasing your cooking?" the woman from earlier asked. "Perhaps a pop-up restaurant or a food stall? You could start small and build from there." Clara's eyes widened at the suggestion. "I've dreamed of that. I've always wanted to create a menu that reflects my journey, my heritage. I could share my family recipes, dishes that have been passed down for generations," she replied, her excitement palpable. Encouraged, the guests began to share their own experiences with food, each one weaving a thread into the tapestry of Clara's vision. She listened intently, absorbing their stories, her heart swelling with hope. Ethan's frustration bubbled beneath the surface as he watched his friends rally behind Clara. He felt the humiliation gnawing at him, a burning reminder of his failed attempt to belittle her. "You think it's that easy?" he scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. "You can't just snap your fingers and make a restaurant appear." "Maybe not," Clara countered, her voice steady. But every great restaurant starts with a dream, and I'm willing to work hard for it. I believe in taking risks. If I fail, at least I'll know I tried. Failure can be costly, especially in this industry, he shot back, desperation creeping into his tone. Not everyone has the luxury of failing and trying again. Then let me show you what I can do, Clara replied, her voice rising above the whispers. I may not have your connections or your wealth, but I have something more valuable, an unwavering determination to succeed. The air in the room crackled with tension as more guests began to speak up. I'd love to help you find a way to showcase your talents. The man with the notepad chimed in again. I'm a food blogger and I can help promote your pop-up. We can create something special together. Clara's heart soared at his words. Really? That would mean the world to me, she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and gratitude. Count me in too, another guest exclaimed, a young woman with bright red hair. I own a catering service. We could collaborate on a tasting event. I can help with the logistics. Ethan's face turned a shade of crimson as he felt the weight of the room shift further away from him. The laughter and camaraderie he had orchestrated now turned into a supportive community rallying behind Clara. He realized he was no longer the centerpiece of the event. She had captivated the audience completely. As the conversations flourished, Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Her heart raced at the possibilities unfolding before her, a network of support, a chance to turn her dreams into reality. Just then, a distinguished man with silver hair approached Clara, his expression serious yet kind. I'm a chef with a small bistro downtown, and I'd like to offer you an internship. I believe you have the potential to go far in this field, he said, extending his hand towards her. Clara's breath caught in her throat, disbelief flooding her senses. Are you serious? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Absolutely. You have the passion and the drive. I can teach you the skills you need to succeed, he replied, a genuine smile breaking across his face. Ethan stood frozen, unable to comprehend the turn of events. The humiliation weighed heavily on him, the realization that his attempt to belittle Clara had backfired spectacularly. He watched as Clara, once the target of his cruel joke, now stood on the precipice of opportunity, surrounded by admirers who believed in her. I don't know what to say, Clara stammered, tears of joy brimming in her eyes as she shook the chef's hand. Thank you. This means so much to me. As she basked in this moment of triumph, Ethan felt the walls closing in around him. The laughter that once filled the room now felt like a mockery of his failed attempt to assert dominance. The guests who had once been his allies were now captivated by Clara, their attention firmly fixed on her future, while he stood on the sidelines, a mere observer to her rising success. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all, Ethan muttered under his breath, retreating further into the shadows of the grand mansion, his mind racing with a mixture of regret and confusion. The night had taken an unexpected turn, and he was left grappling with the consequences of his arrogance. Clara stood in the bustling kitchen of the renowned restaurant, the aroma of garlic and herbs swirling around her like a comforting embrace. The once timid waitress had transformed into a confident apprentice, her hands deftly chopping vegetables under the watchful eye of Chef Mario. He was a culinary wizard, and Clara felt fortunate to be learning from him. The restaurant, with its gleaming stainless steel appliances and vibrant atmosphere, was a far cry from the cramped diner where she had spent countless hours waiting tables. Clara, can you pass me the thyme? Chef Mario called out, his voice cutting through the sounds of sizzling pans and murmuring staff. Clara grabbed the small container, her heart racing with excitement. She had been here for 2 weeks, and every day felt like a new adventure, each dish a step closer to her dreams. Here you go, chef, she said, handing him the herb with a smile. He nodded, a faint smile appearing on his face as he sprinkled the thyme into the sauce simmering on the stove. Clara watched closely, absorbing every detail, the way he tasted the sauce, the way he adjusted the seasoning, the passion he poured into each dish. Remember, cooking is not just about following the recipe, it's about feeling it, Chef Mario said, catching her gaze. You need to put a piece of yourself into your food. Clara nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She had always loved cooking, but now it felt more like a calling. As the evening rush began, Clara found herself moving with newfound grace and efficiency. She worked alongside seasoned chefs, her confidence growing with each dish she prepared. The kitchen was a symphony of clattering utensils and sizzling pans, and Clara was beginning to find her rhythm within it. "Clara, you're a natural," one of her colleagues, Jenna, exclaimed as they took a brief moment to catch their breath. Jenna was a vibrant woman in her late 20s with a contagious laugh that lit up the kitchen. "If you keep this up, you'll be running your own kitchen in no time." Clara felt a rush of pride at the compliment. "Thanks, Jenna. I just hope I don't mess anything up," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron, a hint of nervousness creeping in. "Don't worry about that. We all mess up sometimes. Just learn from it and keep moving forward," Jenna encouraged, flashing her a reassuring smile. As night fell, the restaurant filled with patrons eager for an exquisite dining experience. Clara moved to the front, helping plate the dishes. The ambiance was electric, and she felt a thrill as she watched customers savor the meals she had helped create. This was the life she had dreamed of, a world away from the diner's fluorescent lights and mundane routine. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan sat alone in his opulent office, the city skyline illuminated outside his window. The weight of his recent experiences bore down on him. He had watched Clara thrive since that fateful night at the party, and a mix of admiration and jealousy churned within him. The laughter and camaraderie he had once relished felt hollow now, as he reflected on his actions and the way he had treated Clara. "Why did I think humiliating her would make me feel better?" Ethan muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. The more he thought about Clara's fiery spirit and determination, the more he realized how much he had underestimated her. She had stood up to him in front of his friends, challenging him in a way no one else had dared to do. "Maybe I've been looking at everything the wrong way," he mused, his thoughts spiraling. Ethan had always believed that wealth equated to respect and power, yet Clara had shown him that true strength lay in resilience and passion. It gnawed at him that he had squandered his privilege on arrogance. The phone rang, jolting him from his reverie. It was his assistant, Jessica. "Ethan, we have a charity event coming up next month. I think you should consider reaching out to Clara. She could bring a fresh perspective on the food aspect," she suggested, her voice steady and professional. Ethan hesitated, the memory of Clara's defiance still vivid in his mind. "You mean the girl I invited to embarrass at my party?" he replied, his tone laced with bitterness. "Ethan, that's not who she is anymore. She's making waves in the culinary world. You can't ignore her talent," Jessica urged, sensing his reluctance. "This could be a chance to redeem yourself. Collaborating on a charity event could not only help her, but also give you a new outlook on things." He sighed, staring out at the twinkling city lights. "You really think she'd want to work with me after everything?" "I think she might surprise you. People can be more forgiving than we give them credit for," Jessica replied, her voice softening. "Just be honest with her. It's the least you can do." Ethan felt a flicker of hope at the idea. He envisioned Clara, her eyes bright with ambition, and imagined her cooking side by side with him. It was a daunting thought, reaching out to the very person he had wronged. But perhaps it was time to extend an olive branch. The next morning, Ethan drafted an email, his fingers hovering over the keyboard as he searched for the right words. "Dear Clara," he typed, then paused. He wanted to be sincere, to convey his regret without sounding condescending. After several drafts, he finally settled on an invitation to meet and discuss a charity event he was spearheading, emphasizing how much he respected her talent. Clara was astonished when she received the email. She stared at the screen, her heart racing. Ethan, apologizing? It felt surreal. She had spent weeks burying her anger and focusing on her new path. But the idea of working with him sent a wave of conflicting emotions through her. "What do you think?" Jenna asked, noticing Clara's furrowed brow as she read the email for the third time. "Is it a trap?" "I don't know," Clara replied, biting her lip. "Part of me wants to tell him to shove it, but another part wonders if this could be an opportunity." "Opportunities with a side of drama," Jenna chuckled. "But seriously, it could be a good way to show him you've moved on and that you're doing amazing things. Plus, a charity event? That's a noble cause." Clara leaned back in her chair, contemplating. What if he's just trying to save face? Or worse, what if he hasn't changed at all? Then you walk away. You're not the same girl he tried to humiliate, Jenna reassured her. You've got this, Clara. Just think about it. Clara took a deep breath, feeling a surge of determination. Maybe this was her chance to confront Ethan, to show him how far she had come and how little his opinion mattered now. She picked up her phone and began typing a response, her heart pounding with anticipation and uncertainty. Let's meet and discuss your proposal, she typed, her fingers steady. But I have some conditions. As she pressed send, Clara felt a rush of empowerment. No matter what happened next, she was ready to face Ethan, to stand her ground just as she had at the party. The past was behind her, and with each new opportunity, she was carving out a future that was distinctly her own. Clara sat at the small cafe table, her fingers nervously tapping against the surface, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. This was her first meeting with Ethan since their chaotic encounter at the party. He had been both her tormentor and her unexpected ally, and now he was offering her a chance at collaboration, a chance that could open doors she had only dreamed of. Yet, could she trust him? Ethan arrived promptly, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the casual ambiance of the cafe. He looked different today. The arrogance that typically radiated from him seemed muted, replaced by an air of sincerity. As he approached, he offered a tentative smile that caught Clara off guard. "Thank you for meeting me, Clara," he said, his voice softer than she remembered. "I know things were complicated at the party." Clara nodded, crossing her arms defensively. "Complicated is one way to put it." "Right," he chuckled lightly, the sound almost charming. "I deserved that. I was a fool to think I could just toy with someone like you." She raised an eyebrow, refusing to let him off the hook so easily. "And why should I believe you now? You invited me to that party to humiliate me in front of your friends." Ethan's expression hardened for a moment, but then he sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I know, it was awful, and I can't change the past. But I've realized something important since then. You have a fire in you, Clara. I admire that. I want to help you." Clara leaned back in her chair, assessing him. "Help me? Why? What's in it for you?" "Honestly?" He leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "I want to make amends. I've been surrounded by people who only care about status and wealth. It's suffocating. You showed me that there's more to life than money. I want to support someone who has real passion." She considered his words, the sincerity in his eyes making her heart flutter, with a mixture of hope and caution. "And you think collaborating on a charity event will make up for everything?" "It's a start," he replied, his tone earnest. "I have connections in the culinary world that could benefit you. We could create something meaningful together, something that showcases your talent and helps those in need." Clara felt a flicker of excitement at the thought, but the memories of their past encounter loomed large in her mind. "I'll think about it, but I need to know that you're serious about this." Ethan nodded vigorously. "I promise, Clara. No games this time. Just two people trying to make a difference." As they continued to discuss the potential event, Clara found herself relaxing. They brainstormed ideas, and she felt a thrill at the prospect of using her culinary skills for a greater cause. Ethan's enthusiasm was infectious, and for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man beneath the facade of wealth and arrogance. Just as Clara began to consider the possibilities, her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the spell of their conversation. She glanced at the screen, her heart sinking as she recognized the caller ID, an old friend from her hometown. "Excuse me," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. She answered the call, stepping away from the table to take the conversation privately. "Clara, you won't believe what I just found out." Her friend's voice was frantic, urgency lacing every word. "It's about Ethan." "Ethan?" Clara's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "It's his family. They're not who they say they are. I just heard from someone who knows. There's a scandal brewing that could change everything for him." Clara's mind raced as she processed the words. What kind of scandal? "There's something about his parents, something that could ruin their reputation. You need to be careful, Clara. If you get involved with him, it might backfire." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced back at Ethan, who was watching her with an expression of concern, unaware of the storm brewing in her mind. "I have to go. I'll call you back," she said, hanging up quickly. Her heart raced as she turned back to Ethan, who stood up, concern etched on his face. "Is everything okay?" Clara forced a smile, but inside turmoil raged. "Yeah, just something personal." "Clara, you don't have to hide anything from me. We're in this together now," he said, stepping closer. "Are we?" she snapped before she could stop herself. "I just received some news about you. Something I need to understand before we move forward." Ethan's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "I heard there's a scandal involving your family. Something that could change how everyone views you." His expression shifted, the vulnerability replaced by a flicker of anger. "What? Who told you that?" "Someone from my hometown. They warned me to be careful," Clara replied, her voice shaking slightly. "Is it true?" Ethan looked away, his jaw clenched tightly. "It's complicated, Clara." "Complicated how?" she pressed, her heart pounding in her chest. "You're asking me to trust you, but I need to know the truth." He sighed, running a hand through his hair again, this time in frustration. "My family has a lot of money, but it's built on a foundation of lies. My parents have hidden things from me. I don't want to be defined by their mistakes." "Then why are you involved in this world?" Clara asked, her tone softening. "Why not break free from it?" Ethan looked at her then, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. "Because it's all I've known. But I want to be different. I want to create something real. That's why I reached out to you." Clara felt the weight of his words, and for a moment, she wanted to believe him. But could she? The secrets swirling around them felt like a dark cloud, threatening to overshadow the new connection they were building. As she opened her mouth to respond, her phone buzzed again, pulling her attention away. It was another message from her friend, but she couldn't bring herself to look. Instead, she focused on Ethan, searching for any sign of deception in his gaze. "Clara," he said softly, stepping closer, "I know I've made mistakes, but I want to change. I want to do this with you." The sincerity in his voice melted some of her reservations, but the weight of the unknown still loomed heavily. "I need time to process everything," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here, and I mean what I said. I want to help you." As Clara watched him, she felt the threads of their shared journey intertwining in a way she hadn't anticipated. But as she turned to leave, the unresolved questions lingered in the air between them, a reminder that their paths were still fraught with uncertainty. With one last glance back at Ethan, she walked away, her heart heavy with the weight of secrets, both his and her own. What lay ahead was as unpredictable as the twists of fate that had brought them together in the first place.